In this video, we're not just going to be speaking about the Land of Punt. There was an idea that we said we would like to try come back to. Let's read this part. The idea that Meroe was the center of a large trading network that embraced the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean and stretched across the sub-Sahara to West Africa. The reviewer determinedly challenges the idea that Ethiopia was more ancient than Egypt and the center of a major mercantile empire. So we're going to keep this in mind as we do this video. Let me just show you the source for where we're getting this from. Okay, so we did a video called The Dry and Dusty Mummy Ethiopia. If you would like to know or would like to watch that video, I'll put that in the description below. So George Hoskins, Travels in Ethiopia and the History of Meroe. Just read something from here in case you didn't watch that video. It says that, more important still, he attached to his travels in Nubia a synthetic study on the history of Ethiopia, Nubia and Meroe, which argued that the southern civilizations were of greater antiquity than Egypt. Hoskins was following the Greek and Roman traditions, but contemporary reviews of his work show that this view was already being challenged and replaced by a much more negative opinion of the Middle Nile and its cultures, a view that continued into the late 20th century. So if we go to a map to think about this, so here we see Meroe and the kingdom or the empire of Kush. So we're thinking about this region as being a center of a major merchant empire, and this debate that we were in about which is of greater antiquity, Egypt or Kush. And what it was saying was that Egypt has kind of won the battle, with the Egyptologists with more attention and fame coming to Egypt and Kush being neglected or largely ignored or even reviewed in a very negative way. Now, when we did this video, one of our viewers said to me, why don't you do a video or a study on the history of Somaliland, Somalia? And I said, I don't really know that much about the history of this region to do a video. And the viewer said, well, what about Punt? What about Queen Hatshepsut? And I thought that was very, well, it sounded very intriguing. So let's think about the land of Punt and go in search of the divine land of the Egyptians. We're going to read from the introduction from this book. The land of Punt, also called Puanet or Pueni by the ancient Egyptians, was a trading partner of Egypt. It was known for producing and exporting gold, incense, aromatic resins, ebony, ivory, tortoise shells, and wild animals. The name is known from ancient Egyptian records of trade expeditions to it. So we know about Punt because of the Egyptian records. I don't know how you pronounce this name, but I'll do my best. The Egyptians called the land of Punt Tanita. Literally translated, this means the land of the gods. When I was researching for this video, I came across different ways that people refer to this name. So I think the context is important. So let me explain what I mean. So we see here that it says land of the gods, but then you can also see it written as land of God, or holy land, or land of the gods' ancestors, or divine land. So I think the context becomes quite important because of the perception that it creates. If you say land of the gods, or if you say land of God, that's quite a big distinction. And if we think about the region that researchers have been looking for, the land of Punt, this is also a region where researchers have been looking for the Garden of Eden. So we can see why it becomes attractive when you hear Holy Land or Divine Land in connection with the Land of Punt. But what is the context? Because it gives an idea here about the sun god Ra for the potential meaning of this name, and it also speaks about the dynastic race and Queen Hatshepsut. So let's read this part about Queen Hatshepsut. It says, Queen Hatshepsut's temple inscriptions at Luxor reveal that her divine mother goddess Hathor was from Punt, with strong indications that the pharaohs considered the origin of their culture to be the land of Punt. This could be important for this debate or argument that we were looking at in our previous videos. What is more ancient, Egypt or Kush? So if the pharaohs and the royalty claim that their origin was from Punt, and even it says the culture, then we can understand the theory of the influence of the South on Egypt with the culture and the royalty, and this leads into the dynastic race theory. So it says, the dynastic race theory was the earliest thesis to attempt to explain how pre-dynastic Egypt developed into the sophisticated monarchy of dynastic Egypt. The theory holds that the earliest roots of the ancient Egyptian dynastic civilization were imported by invaders from Mesopotamia, who then founded the first dynasty and brought culture to the indigenous population. So this is part of the theory of culture being brought to Egypt, and this is saying from Mesopotamia. This is very interesting if you think about what's been said here and what we've been covering in our videos if you've been following the channel for a while. So just think about that with this theory, it's saying that there's an invasion and this culture could be coming from Mesopotamia, but according to the Egyptians, it's saying that their culture and their ancestors were from the land of Punt. So just think about that. That's very interesting. We're not going to look at the first clear mention of Punt. We're going to the example where it speaks about Queen Hatshepsut, because we've already mentioned Queen Hatshepsut. So it says, Queen Hatshepsut of the 18th dynasty made a voyage to Punt in the 15th century BCE and had the details of the journey recorded on the walls of her temple. And it says, one large scene portrays Punt itself, including beehive-shaped houses on stilts, shaded by palm and trees. So there's actually a lot of information, that you can look at to try identify where is the land of Punt, or where was the land of Punt. And this is a very important detail that this book uses for its theory. One example. So there's a lot of information with what we can learn from these large reliefs. Another scene depicts Hatshepsut's fleet of ships departing for and arriving at the distant country, where they were loaded very heavily with the marvels of the land of Punt for the return voyage. Just read one more thing from the introduction. It says, the exact location of the land of Punt is unknown, and through the years it has been cited as part of Arabia, the Horn of Africa, present-day Somalia, the Sudan, or Eritrea. The debate goes on as to where Punt was located, with scholars and historians on every side offering plausible support for their claims. So because there's so many details about what was brought from the land of Punt, you can create a theory and it could sound very plausible. So we're going to speak about that because you might be surprised about the book we're actually reading from. So it's by Dani Urwantu, and the theory of this book is that Punt was in Indonesia. So this island here called Sumatra or Sumatra as being the mystical land of Punt. So we are at the furthest extremities of the Indian Ocean, coming towards the South China Sea. So maybe you could be surprised that we actually have this example of a theory about the land of Punt with Indonesia. But it is important that the book actually does acknowledge the main theories for the land of Punt. So let's work through the theories and then also come to this work looking towards Indonesia. And why did I choose to use this source? Before the author gives the theory of the book, looking towards Indonesia for the land of Punt, it does speak about the existing location hypotheses. We've already done quite a bit of reading, so I'd like to try go through this as quick as I can. So it starts by saying that the researchers were looking towards Arabia because of Punt being a source of aromatic substances and Arabia being famous for perfumes. But then what about the African animals like the giraffe and rhinoceros, which they say is not found in Arabia? So then looking towards Africa, the Somali coast. And now we were saying about all these details that you can look at to try to find or locate the land of Punt, and researchers trying to find the best location. And it says that Somali also is known for aromatics. So you can see this attempt of trying to match the descriptions or what was brought back from the land of Punt with a region that makes sense. Now we have a study looking at the flora and fauna, and this theory is saying that the Egyptians would have come by river and not by sea. So looking more inland, the Atbara River and the confluence of the White and Blue Niles. But then this next scholar, Kenneth Kitchen, is saying that this seems to contradict the relief because of the lobster and the squid, which is depicted, and this is found in the Red Sea. And these are depicted beneath the Punt ships. And according to this scholar, we should be looking towards eastern Sudan and northern Ethiopia. I'm not going to read this part. I'll put this source in the description if you really are interested in this and would like to read all these details. There's another interesting debate about, was it along the sea or on both sides of the sea? And then giving a potential idea of where this could be with the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb, Djibouti and Yemen. So very interesting, this search for the land of Punt. I want to go away from this book to look at a few other things. This source was interesting. Mummified baboons point to the direction of the fabled land of Punt. The Egyptians didn't tell us where the land of Punt was, or didn't give us a lot of details to locate it. And this is speaking about a mummified baboon, and then looking at the genetics, and this is pointing towards modern-day Eritrea. So that's interesting. And one more. This page says Somalia, the ancient lost kingdom of Punt is finally found. So very interesting, this page. I'll put these all in the description if you want to look at these. So we have Somalia, continuing Puntite traditions with this dancing. And this etymology could be important. We're going to speak about etymology as well in this video. It says, based on the evidence of the ancient pharaohs' inscriptions, Puntland is certainly the state of Somalia at the Horn of Africa. The ancient city of Apone in Somalia is identical to the city of Poen, referenced as part of Punt by ancient inscriptions. And we even have region of Somalia if I can just find that map, designated as Puntland. So recently, even a region in Somalia has been designated as Puntland. And if we just think about that, the map one more time, this map seems to try cover the different theories for the Land of Punt. Why is the author looking towards Indonesia and the island of Sumatra? It's going to be difficult to do the book justice in just a few minutes. So we're just going to share a few things, but the source is in the description below if you'd like to really go into this and get all the details. Let's read from this part. These complications and achievements would indicate that the voyages did not take place solely in the Red Sea, but in the open sea, in the Indian Ocean. The exceptionally long distance would explain why so few voyages were made there. So unlikely they were in the Red Sea alone. So that's interesting. Should we be looking beyond the Red Sea and where this map is telling us we should be looking for the Land of Punt? Should we be looking for Punt to be of greater distance away to explain the difficulty and maybe also the sense of achievement that the Egyptians clearly thought it was to make this journey and return from the Land of Punt? If it was in this region, the way these maps show, wouldn't they then make the journey more frequently? So just an interesting idea for the book, and it's important to the theory to try explain why it could be Indonesia for the Land of Punt. Let's read one more thing to get the idea of the perspective, or more of an idea of the perspective of the author, if we read this part here. Archaeological evidence is so far somewhat sparse, and unless additional evidence turns up, it is unlikely that anyone will ever be able to pinpoint the location of Punt with total certainty. So not saying that this theory is certain, and we'll read this part. All that one can do is make a hypothesis for its whereabouts with a fair degree of probability by gathering evidence to shape a compound of observable characteristics. And there's a lot of details that the author puts forward, in terms of what needs to be found or be a part of the theory for it to make sense as the Land of Punt, with gold, cinnamon, the trees, and with the animals. And we also made mention of the native houses. The huts are built on poles, and said that could be an important detail that could help you to try to locate the Land of Punt. We're just going to show this one for this video. Just want to go to this page. Image A and image B, these are Puntite, so from the Land of Punt. And then image C onwards, these are from Indonesia. So it is very interesting to see the similarities with these houses. So a very interesting book, and I would like to share what brought me to this source and why we chose to use this book as our main source. It was because the book speaks about the Phoenicians. So this could be very important for thinking about the Land of Punt. We're going to speak about the Phoenicians. This could be important for our perspective. We're going to discuss the Phoenicians. I would like to read this part here first. It says, before the Greeks and Romans, the Phoenicians ruled the Mediterranean. If we go to a map to show the trade routes, we can see how the Phoenicians would come to dominate the Mediterranean. But we want to discuss, where was their origin? With this map, we are presented that the origin would be the Eastern Mediterranean. Let's go back to the source. So the book does present what we taught about the Phoenicians, but there's some very interesting information in here I would like to read. So this part here is important. It says, there is no doubt they were capable of crossing vast oceans using currents and winds. It speaks about the great secrecy of their trade routes. This could be a red flag. I'd like to mention this, that it says that there is no evidence of ancient cedar forests in Lebanon. The current cedar trees could very well have been transplanted from elsewhere during ancient times. So if this is true, this could be a red flag, because we know that Lebanon was famed for its cedar. If we read this Bible verse, it says, "The righteous flourish like the palm tree and grow like the cedar in Lebanon." Psalm 92. So that's very interesting. That's true. That's what it's saying here, that there is no evidence of ancient cedar forests in Lebanon. And it says, the mystery still remains as to where the Phoenicians truly arose from. Certainly not from the Mediterranean region, because there is no story about it. So if they didn't originate from the Mediterranean, then surely we have to question what we've been presented with. And then the book does say what we've mentioned many times on the channel, what Herodotus told us about the origin, that the Phoenicians formerly dwelt on the shores of the Erythraean Sea. The Indian Ocean was formerly named the Erythraean Sea. So this is where it gets very interesting, because it says, implicit in this account is that the Phoenicians were originated from the east, or Asiatic, at the shore of the Indian Ocean. And this book gives a very interesting theory of how the names of Phoenicia and Punt could be connected, but we're going to go in a different way, because I came across this page speaking about Poeni. So it says Poenit, terms given by Near Eastern civilizations for Phoenicia or the land of Punt. Poeni, the Latin term for the people of Phoenicia. Now I've created a graphic so we can think about this for Punt. In the book, in the introduction, it said that the Egyptians also called Punt Poenet or Poeni. And we noticed the similarity between Poenet, Poenet, Poeni, Poeni, but Poeni, as we see here, is the Latin term for the people of Phoenicia. So is there a connection with the name Punt and Phoenicia and the Phoenicians? And this would be very important for our perspective, because when you add the Phoenicians to the equation, a lot more becomes possible. If we think about some of those things we've read about their fame for their exploration, for their technology with the ships. So if we start to think about the Phoenicians, maybe we can start to understand why there's such a mystery surrounding Punt, trying to find the land of Punt, because what we could be looking at is a maritime people and a maritime empire. And if the Phoenicians did originate in this region with the Erythraean Sea, they may have had a maritime empire that could have stretched to Indonesia, which is why the author of this book does put forward a very interesting theory. It even involves the Phoenician alphabet. We didn't read this yet, that there is a part of this theory is a Phoenician alphabet on Sumatra in Indonesia. So very interesting, because it just changes your perspective. Because the reason why there could be different theories for the land of Punt is because, or could it be because of the Phoenicians? And could it make sense that what we could be looking at for Punt is more of a maritime empire? And that could explain why there's so many different details of what the Egyptians brought back from the land of Punt maybe we shouldn't be looking for one certain region for the Land of Punt. So for example, if we say, I believe that Punt was in Somalia, and sticking to that, maybe that's not the right way to go about this. Maybe we do have to consider, well, we should really consider how big a part are the Phoenicians playing in this equation, and how does that affect what we think about the Land of Punt, but then how does it affect the way we view the ancient past and the history, and also the history that we are presented with for the Phoenicians? Because I'm not saying that the Phoenicians didn't come to dominate the Mediterranean, but if they were first originating in the Indian Ocean, did they first dominate the Indian Ocean before they came to dominate the Mediterranean? So yeah, very interesting for our perspective on the Phoenicians. Let's do some final thoughts before we finish the video. Were you able to keep this quote in mind as we went through and explored the Land of Punt? So let's remind ourselves of this, that ancient Meroe was the center of a large trading network that embraced the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. So now we're thinking about how far did this trading network expand across the Indian Ocean? Did it reach all the way to Indonesia with the Phoenicians? And then this part here also was very interesting to me, where it said that it stretched across the sub-Sahara to West Africa. So we're not just thinking about East Africa and the civilization and this trade network, that it's stretching across to West Africa. So what was happening in West Africa? So that's very interesting. And that it was a major mercantile empire, a major merchant empire. So if you just think about Nubia and Meroe, what these explorers were saying, then it might not sound that credible. But when we add into the equation the Land of Punt and this trade between Egypt and Punt, then does it start to become more credible when we weigh all these things up? So let me know what you think about this video. I hope you enjoyed this one and found it very interesting. I would like to think about this trade network stretching across to West Africa as well. Maybe we can explore that in one of the future videos. We also said that in our previous video that we don't seem to have history on our side. Maybe we need to make some sort of a distinction. Maybe we don't have accepted history on our side, or it seems that the accepted history is not on our side. But maybe there is history that can support the picture or the study that we're doing. So yeah, this is the map that we're working on. If you've just come across this channel, it's difficult to tell you what videos to watch, but if you try watch our recent videos, we're trying to recap what we've been doing on the channel. So if you're interested, either try see if you can catch up, or you're also welcome to ask some questions in the comments. Thank you to those that are sharing and trying to help with the study, showing what they know and have come across. Thank you to those that like the videos, and hope to see you in another one.